how does the intro go? I've forgotten. Welcome to
everybody.
Parallel.
Oh, we're out of practice.
Oh.
We're out of practice. All right.
Welcome to Parallel Lives. I'm Dimmer, and this is my co-host Q.
Hello.
Today we're talking to Halo about perceptions
Of reality.
How do maladaptive daydreamers perceive their reality?
Yes. This is pretty big for some people, especially since time is the most important resource, and we tend to use up a lot of it while daydreaming. So, for a lot of us, time flies. For others, it does not. It just depends. So we're going to be going over that today.
Yes, that
Good.
and yeah, I don't know, just a bunch of stuff related to that, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe we should start with because I think some people, I think most of our audience is already maladaptive daydreamers and they already know this. But for anybody who doesn't know it,
Mm-hmm.
and just sort of landed here because they're curious, like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we get the question a lot, do we mix up the two?
And this is rather bothersome because some people think that maladaptive daydreaming has to deal with something like schizophrenia or something along those lines, and that's not quite the case. What do you want to start with? Like, what would be a good starting point, Halo? What do you think?
Well, I guess I'll just jump into it. So I think that it affects. I think that it changes how we perceive a lot of things throughout our entire lives.
Hmm.
And I guess I'll talk about some of the first points on just some of the biggest perceptions that I've had before and after I like different levels of daydreaming that I've had. For instance, in the past, when I was daydreaming at my worst, just all day, every day, I was able. It was like being able to push a button and then it's like fast forwarding through time. For example, I had a cousin named James where I had to wait in a car because he was waiting for a job interview. Something went wrong and I ended up having to wait in this car 4 to 6 hours. And he was apologizing, just saying, "I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" And I tried to explain to him like, "I am completely fine. I can wait forever just because I was daydreaming." But I didn't tell him the daydreaming part, and
Yeah.
I was just able to just snap my fingers and just go fast forward through just insane amounts of time.
Oh my
Hmm.
god. I have the same story.
Ooh, really? We have the same cousin named James. That's interesting.
My my
Secret
sister
cousins.
my sister asked me to pick her up from work, and she was on the closing shift, so I drove all the way to her work and waited for her to get out, and then she was a few minutes late, so I just flipped the seat back, to wait until she was finishing up. I figured she was closing down the store. She wasn't. She had gotten a ride with somebody else and never told me. So I was sitting there for hours, and I didn't notice that I was sitting there for hours. After a while, I was like, "Oh, I guess she's not coming out. I'll go home." So I just left, and, my dad wasn't home. He was out searching the streets because they thought I'd gotten into a car accident.
Dimmer's hair gotten gray, and then they realized that they spent the last 2 years in a parking lot. Didn't realize
Yeah,
how far.
I was fine. I was just chilling in a parking lot for hours figuring, "Oh, my sister's just running a few minutes late."
Well, it's funny like that, right? It's like for a lot of people, because I've gotten this from non-maladaptive daydreamers. I've discussed this with friends over the years. A lot of people hate drive because it's about cars, right? So I have in the past a delivery drove for a variety of businesses, and I like delivery driving. I like, well, I mean, maybe not all the time, but I like delivery driving because what I do, and a friend of mine, Lynn, she went and she was telling me how she couldn't do this, right? Because when I delivery drive, I zonk out, I completely go into daydreaming mode, and I'm just driving the whole way down, daydreaming up, down, back, forward, delivering, pizzas or Thai or food or whatever, and I just go and I'm getting paid to daydream. That's my job is daydreaming while delivery driving, and I had a lot of people tell me they said I couldn't do that. I'd be terrified that I couldn't pay attention on the road or I'd get in an accident or something like that because cars seem to be I think we talked about it a little last season. Cars are like a prime area where even like just the majority of people will like daydream or suddenly zonk out, and then they'll be at their destination, right? Um,
Mm.
so for me, I'm not like I didn't get lost on the streets or sit in a parking lot for 300 years and then suddenly pop out of my daydream old gray with a gargantuan beard, right? I instead do that regularly, intermittently. So a little different, but it just cars in general seem to be like a breeding ground for daydreaming in some capacity, if that makes sense. Is that a little different for you all? Could you drive while daydreaming, right? Because then you don't have to sit there through, I don't know, for depending on, for those of you who are in cities, like 40 minutes of traffic, 50 minutes of traffic, right? Maybe an hour or two just driving down the road. You could just completely cut that out, right?
Yeah, I daydream while driving all the time.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that it's at least when especially when back when my daydreaming was a lot worse. I felt like that, but just in my everyday life and not just in driving. I would just like I'd be waiting in class, and while the teacher's talking, I would just be daydreaming. While I'm talking with others, I was in different social groups and helping with things. Like I was doing sometimes pretty advanced stuff while just mostly daydreaming in the back of my mind and just relying on my autopilot to keep everything going. And
Hmm.
I know a lot of non-daydreamers do what you're talking about with the driving thing, and it's something where you kind of zone out, though not to the same levels that you're talking about usually. But
Hmm.
I felt that way about, I guess, my everyday life. I was just kind of running on autopilot, kind of zoning out, going through the motions, and that's just how I lived, quote unquote.
So, but like the short of it would be like the question is, right, I guess, how do you perceive the passage of time while daydreaming? It's like you don't, right? You like suddenly like pop in and out of existence, right? And like suddenly all that time is gone. Because that's what it feels
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, I guess that's what I feel like. I mean, I can tell a little bit. I can tell when it's been the difference between 5 minutes and 3 hours. But after that, like, it gets messed up. Like, when my daydreaming was at its height. Okay, a little anecdote. So one day, when my daydreaming was at its worst, I was still in school. And, what I would do is I would come home from school, go straight up to my bedroom, lay down and sleep, air quotes. I wasn't actually sleeping, I was daydreaming. Until I had to go to school the next day. So I did that, and then it felt like I, like, came out of it for a minute, and I was like, "Oh, shit, I've been doing this way too long." I I looked outside, and it was that time of year when dawn and dusk look the same. So, or feel the same, I don't know. I looked outside, though, and I was like, "Shit, I'm gonna be late for school." And, I, like, threw on some clothes real quick. I grabbed my book bag and I ran downstairs, and my sister's standing at the bottom of the stairs, and she's like, "What are you doing?" Because I was going to catch the bus, but it was like it was like 7 PM, and I thought it was 7 AM.
Hmm.
It had been, I don't know what, 4 to 7? It had been a few hours, but I thought I had daydreamed all night, literally
Hmm.
literally all night, and I hadn't.
Yeah, I like you usually for me it's like 2 hour sprints of just like daydreaming, and then suddenly you're back and you like, or maybe if like I were to switch a song because daydream like music's a trigger for me, right? I'll like switch a song and I'm like, man, it is suddenly 3 a or like 2 a.m. and then 3 a.m. and then 4 a.m. and it's like maybe I should go to bed 5 a.m. 5:30.
Mhm.
Yeah, time doesn't exist, right? There's this is the joke online where time isn't real. It's like time really isn't real like when you're daydreaming. It just like comes and goes and it doesn't really stop.
I guess I'll mention the flip side that I've felt. I kind of went through an abrupt change a couple years ago now, where I went from daydreaming hours and hours constantly every day to just a few minutes a day, and it felt as if every single day of my life, I all of a sudden just gained 5 or 6 hours, and it just felt like literally it just feels like every day is dramatically longer than they used to be. And
It's
I've
so
also tried
strange.
to. It's incredibly strange. It's like every single day is just massively longer, and also I try to daydream less in the back of my mind because I feel like it's been helping me to be more focused and instead of always having split attention constantly. And it's been weird to all of a sudden try to feel like I should do stuff with my time and I can't just daydream all the time. Then all of a sudden I can get bored, like what other people are saying, and I'm like, wow, this really sucks. This is awful. I wish I would I was just daydreaming instead right now. But I just try to keep myself from falling back into that all the time. And
Hmm.
it's a very boredom for people that don't experience just the time wasting boredom is it really sucks. Wow.
It a lot. I guess a lot of people forget that 24. Well, there's a fair few people that forget that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is a long time. There's a lot of time in the day that if you were to just like realize it's there, you're like, wow, I have so much stuff I could do. Um, but
This
like in term,
Sorry, no, this is just reminding me of how old I am because like you said, time is not real. And it is a real thing that the older you get, the faster time goes. And I am at the age now where I am noticing that everything is shorter. Days
hmm
go by so fast. Years are flying by right now. And it's
hmm
and it's only gonna speed up.
I'm actually just sitting in a. I don't know about you. I don't know. How are you flying? I'm just sitting right now. I need you to tell me how to grow wings and fly away because
Yeah,
I'm
they
I'm
just,
stuck in my computer chair.
my baby was born 2 weeks ago, and he's going to college next month, like, that's what it
Oh,
feels like.
It's a genius baby.
your child is so smart.
That's it's just what it feels like, and it's a thing that happens, and, I'm older than both of you, so I don't know, I think on top of whatever maladaptive daydreaming has fucked up my perception of time, like, there's also just the fact that it is going faster for me.
So time does indeed exist, unless you're maladaptive daydreaming, in which case it just flies away somewhere else, and we don't. We did. It just kind of goes. I guess I wouldn't say it like eats up time. Like maladaptive daydreaming doesn't like eat it up in the same way that because like eating up time implies that it just it. How would I put this? Like eating up time implies that you're doing nothing, like the time just disappears, and like maybe it does, but like there's so much that happens when you're daydreaming that is just like I guess it eats up so like maybe you eat up 2 hours worth of daydreaming, but for me it feels like I've just gone through an entire season's worth of episodes of a show or like I've crafted an entirely new like world or something like that along those lines in the time of like 5 to 6 hours, if that makes sense.
It does, and, as much as I love my characters and my worlds, um, they're not worth they're not worth it because the 2 hours that, that we dedicated to it just now is the 2 hours I didn't spend being with my son, and he's only a baby for a minute.
hmm Well, okay, so that I guess that this brings up the question, right? Is it worth being in those daydreams for that amount of time, right? Because another question that people have given us is, do you react to real world issues in the same? Well, I guess they asked for intensity as they do in your daydreams, but I was going to go with if you like react to scenarios in the same way, like you use daydreams as a means of figuring out like how to solve problems in the real world, like dealing with interpersonal relationships and things like that, like how you would end up answering questions or things like that. But that's not quite the same,
Yeah, I think those
I
are
guess.
two
That
different things.
those are two different questions, but I guess we'll start with the one that was given to us by watchers is do you react to real world issues with the same intensity as your daydreams? Like, are your daydreams more intense than reality?
I guess I could jump in. I wanted to say something that's kind of in between the last question and also this question. It kind of bridged the two. I feel like that the perceptions of my daydreams have affected my perceptions of my past and my memories.
Hmm.
And it's generally anecdotal, but a lot of people in the community that I've talked with as well have also had long periods of either their childhoods or different parts of their whenever they're daydreaming that they just barely remember. Like there are certain grades I know I was there, and I have very fleeting memories of just large stretches of time throughout my life. but I can remember pretty vividly sometimes what I was daydreaming at the time. But then my brain I can't recall certain things just going on in life, how I was feeling, what was going on. But and as if my brain just decided, hey, you're always in these daydreams. This is what we're gonna keep. We're just gonna toss all these other memories out and not record them as experiences and memories. And I'm not I'm not like somebody that keeps a lot of scrapbooks or old pictures or other things like that. But I felt, looking back, I did feel almost a bit robbed that I don't have a lot of those same memories that it seems like a lot of other people that I talk with seem to have. And it's just they just didn't record. I just didn't perceive a lot of those things because I don't know if it was just because I was so focused on my daydreams that I wasn't as focused on real life, but it's like my brain didn't hit the record button sometimes.
Hmm. For me, I'm pretty happy that I don't have some of those from when I was younger. Right, I'm glad I have something a bit happier to remember rather than because I never. It's not that I didn't do well in school; I did just fine. But like socially, the environment I was in was rather. It was a bit of it was a bit of a Debbie Downer, as you would. It's not. It wasn't too particularly happy. So I'm glad I had something to remember from high school or middle school or elementary school back then, because all I remember when I would look at my classmates is they would look miserable, and I'm glad that I have something a little bit happier to remember throughout school in terms of that. Other parts of my life, and that's a little bit lacking because of the daydreams. But I mean, there's positives and negatives, I suppose. I'm just like, it's not all bad. What about you, Dimmer? What about when you were younger?
I
Or
I
I guess
feel
now
I
even.
no, well, yeah, from when I was younger, when MD was bad stuff, I feel like I have memories of those times. I feel like I have a normal amount of memories from those times. The reason that I'm lacking in memories from those times is not that am not remembering them, it's that I didn't make them. Like I said, I was in my bedroom at 4 p.m. till 7 a.m. the next day. I wasn't going out and making memories. Um, so the memories that I did make, I think recorded normally. I just wasn't going out and doing anything to remember.
Hmm. Yeah, I've come to the conclusion because I've thought about this a little bit. Um, because I was talking with a gentleman, and I think what did he call it? He called it peaking in high school or peaking in like middle school or like grade school, essentially, right? For those who are not in America, high school is between the sixth and, or sorry, it's the seventh and no,
I
sorry.
think it's ninth and 12th.
Sorry, yeah, I'm late at night. It's the
Yeah,
ninth and 12th grade,
yeah,
and
it's
it's
like
mostly 16
13 to
to 18,
18,
13 to 18. Yeah,
something
4 or
like
5 years.
that.
Yeah, 14 to 18 years old. So you're in your teens. You're spending your teens at school, right? And he was talking about people who have peaked in high school, which is like the best they ever did was in high school. And I never wanted to be like that because I'm not old by any means. I'm not like 150. I don't have my Santa beard yet. But I have a fair bit of my life to go. And I didn't want to dwell on those sort of rather restrictive times when I was a kid. So I'm trying to make the most of my time now, however old you are. If you're in your teens or if you're 20 or 30 or 40 and going through MD and trying to work at it, I'm trying to focus more on the now than I did back then because ultimately, the past, you are made up by your past experiences. And if you feel like you're lacking in certain experiences, no better time than now, right? No time like the present. So that's what I try
Yeah.
to do is make up for lost time, even though I never felt it was particularly lost. Because I had things that made me happy in a time which was really, really rough by comparison.
I think that brings up, not a topic that we had written down or anything, but it is a perception because I feel like a lot of young MDers, especially people who've, got the rough end of it,
Hmm.
um, they their perception is that they've missed their golden years. Why bother?
Your
You know what I
golden
mean?
years is now.
Yeah.
Like whenever you're alive
Yeah.
is your golden years.
It's now, it's always, but you hear like 17-year-olds will say that. Little babies who have their whole lives ahead of them, they really think that MD has taken the best years of their life, and there's nothing worth really, um, becoming better for. And I guess that's not exactly what we meant when we laid out, this topic, like perception of reality, but I think it fits. And
Hmm.
some people do. I would say there's more than one peak in your life. Like I feel like for me, I
Oh,
kind
there's
of
always ups and downs.
yeah, I
There's a
had a
ton.
peak in college, and now I'm coming back around. It was a lull there for a while. I think I'm peaking again. I'm in my 30s. Like there's more peaks to be had.
Hmm. Yeah, just because. So I'm no longer. I'm like, look, I'm not old, but I'm no longer a teenager. And I'm glad that I'm out of high school. I'm not. I wasn't someone who like really liked grade school. Who didn't really do well socially when I was younger. So I was glad to get out of it. But you'll always have your ups and downs, even as like an adult.
Yeah.
Like eventually you'll find yourself in a position where is this all life is. Um, but life is what you make of it. So feel free to make it a party, make it a blast. So that's how I always looked at it, and that's why I try to not let daydreams get to me too much. Even if I find myself daydreaming a lot, try to rein it back a little bit as much as you can. It's hard for sure, um, but that's typically how I look at it. And I encourage you to look at life positively as well, even though the world feels like it's burning all the time.
I kind of really related to the people that felt like their lives were over at like 17, and I
Hmm.
kind of felt in a similar way. I think part of that about the perceptions is because we kind of compare ourselves as maladaptive daydreamers sometimes to the lives that we live inside of the daydreams. It's really common for a lot of people to either have a more perfect or competent version of themselves that have traits that they wish that they had, more friends, more intelligent, more attractive, better spoken. They have certain traits. Sometimes they're famous. They're able to have certain things in life that they wish that they had. And when you compare anything to perfection or their ideas of perfection, you're always going to have flaws in comparison. And I think that especially when you on one side have that juxtaposition of this amazing daydream life, I think sometimes the negatives of that often cause people to procrastinate more in real life or socialize less because of the daydreams. I think that creates a bigger contrast between the how amazing the daydreaming life is compared to your real life.
Hmm.
And when they compare themselves to that, they feel like failures. They think, "Look, I was able to complete so much in there, but then I'm only this far," or "I'm behind other people, and then it's getting even worse because I'm just daydreaming all day." And I think that perception of from the daydreams affects a lot of people that way.
Hmm. Especially when like life typically gets you down and kicks you pretty rough just about every single day or every single week, it does it pretty often. So it's one of these things where regardless of how well you do, there's always something else life throws at you. And it's always, it's about how you get up. And I've talked to a lot of people and it seems like they've forgotten that, the point there's like there's no like point to life, I guess. Like no one tells you how to live, right? You're as free as you wish to be, even though a lot
Yeah.
of people would disagree with me. But it's like it's how you pick yourself up, not how you fall down, because you fall down often. It's just in daydreams you don't fall down as often, so you don't really see that. So like in your daydreams, right? You're just about perfect. So you don't have to fall down and you don't have to get up, but life doesn't exactly work like that. So like it's a personal perception thing. That's typically where that goes, since you don't have to pick yourself up very often, and nobody wants to get kicked down, right? That doesn't ever feel good. Right. So it's like there's never anything to look forward to when you're kicked in the shins and you gotta sort of pick yourself up off your knees. So.
I think that ties back to the question we were actually answering. We went a little off the rails there.
Hmm.
But the initial question was what how do you, do your oh my god. It was about the disparity between how intense daydreams feel versus reality. Like do you feel more intensely in your daydreams than in reality? And I think what Red was getting at there goes right back into that. And just for myself, like, yeah, yeah, I feel like in my real life, I'm a pretty steady person. I don't have a lot of high highs. I don't have a lot of low lows. I just sort of have a some lovely little hills and valleys.
Mhm.
A pretty shallow curve
Mu-
there. Uh,
Mundane.
yeah, but in my daydreams, like the highs are high and the lows are real fucking low.
hmm Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody desires a little bit of. Here, give me 1 second. Everyone desires a little bit of like. There's a word for it. A little bit of a thrill in their life, and that's why we watch television and go towards movies and stories. And some people read comics, and they try to get it there. But we can get it through our daydreams because life really is just super duper mundane.
And it's not even that it's mundane though. Like I don't feel like I react emotionally appropriately
hmm
to things that I should, like somebody dies and I'm just kind of like, "Oh, yeah, I'm sad."
But who
You know,
determines that, right? Who
whereas
determines?
in my daydreams if someone died, I'd be bawling.
Mhm.
I would feel it. I feel like I don't feel things appropriately sometimes.
I guess I'll just say really quick. That's something that I felt changed when I stopped daydreaming as much. One of the changes, it's hard for me to put into words, but it feels as if, like, if you imagine the worlds in different color palettes, I feel like back when I was daydreaming all the time, I was definitely more of a muted person and like dimmer. If I was experiencing something in real life, sometimes I would almost have to choose the appropriate facial expression for the event, where I would just feel really numb. Over time, since I stopped daydreaming as much, I don't know if it's connected or not, but I do feel as if I have more, almost as if everything is with a more saturated color, and like my emotional regulation's getting a little healthier or something, or more normal. But that's just anecdotal. But I do feel as if over time I'm going becoming more quote unquote normal or something. Ever since I stopped just living most of my life in daydreams.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh shit. I had a thought while you were talking there and
My
I
problem.
lost it.
Well, you're gonna find it again. Start looking under the rug. Perhaps it's run away under the couch. When it comes to what many would consider proper emotional responses, I have never used that as a means of determining like whether or not uh, I daydream or view the world with more or less intensity, if that makes sense. Right? Because I've never had proper emotional responses, anyways. Uh, People keep calling me. They keep saying you're autistic or you have ADHD or whatever, and I say, well, I don't know, man. I'm just having a good time. Like if somebody dies, right? Like no one has died close to me, so I can't really like say that someone dying close to me has caused me to cry, or has caused me intense emotional stress. But like if I drive by like something in like strange on the street, or there's like a house on fire, I always think to myself, man, that person is having a bad day. And now most people would say this isn't the quote like proper emotional response, but I'm just not like I don't find that to be, or I've just never had the proper emotional response for stuff like that. So I've never used that as a means of more or less intensity, I guess, which seems to be the slightly different from both of you.
Okay, so I have this personal experience, and I don't know if other MDers have it, so I'm going to throw it out there because I think it's related to this topic. Like, it's really easy for me to let people go,
Like
like
interpersonal relationships.
interpersonal relationships. Like, if I never talk to my mother again, I would be okay. you know,
hmm
if I have a friend and I'm like, oh, I guess we're not going to hang out, and I never spoke to them again. I would be
hmm
okay. And that makes me feel bad because I want meaningful friendships. Um, You know, and then, you know, in your daydreams, all the friendships that my characters have in daydreams are deep and meaningful and intimate and you know, and connected, and I don't have those in real life. And when I do have those in real life, even then, like, okay, I guess we're not friends anymore. Bye. You know, it's like that disconnect.
Hmm. Well, I found, I realized this over the past, I think, year or two. Is the reason I've always had a bit of a deeper relationship with my characters in my daydreams is because of dramatic irony, right? Well, you know, do you know what dramatic irony is when watching a
No.
television show or a movie, right? So dramatic irony is where you know, like you as the audience know something that the characters do not, right? So like, for instance, if for me, if my life or like if real life was a television show, right? And I am one of the characters. I do not know a lot of things. I don't know how other people perceive things. I don't know what other people are thinking. I don't know how they're feeling, which is evidenced by the fact that a lot of people's reactions to what I say and do I find very strange. Um, right, but if an audience was watching, they would usually know, right, what the person is thinking for one reason or another. Maybe they saw a scene that the other characters don't know about or something along those lines. But because we are our characters and our daydreams are are made by us, we typically, or at least for me, I guess, maybe not others, but I know for me, I know what my characters are thinking because they come from me, right? So I know them more intimately because they are a part of me. Whereas in real life, I don't know what most people are thinking or feeling, or they're disconnected simply by being other people, you know, by the nature of being other people. So that's where I found that I like get this disconnect where like I'm not as close with other people as I am with my characters because I just know my characters better, right? That's what I found in like the most recent 2 years. Does that make sense? Or do you like not agree?
I don't have this at all with either one, honestly. I'm I'm similar to Dimmer in that I am able to just cut people out of my life in real life and just end up never talking with them. Or sometimes I just have friends, and if we drift apart, it's kind of sad. Oh, we drifted apart, but it's not something that I get hung up on like a lot of other people seem to. It's just well, it just happens in life. People drift apart. But
Mhm,
as far as my daydream characters go, I always just thought of them as stories and hope to one day write or publish different books from my daydream worlds. And if I have to throw some of my most beloved characters into, like, a torture chamber and, like, kill them off because I think it would make the plot 1% better, I will throw them into the butcher chamber, like, I don't care. Like, I
mhm,
don't I so Dimmer was like, "Oh, I have all these connections with these characters," and he's been like, "Oh, like, they're just means to an end for me," so I don't
mhm.
care about my daydream characters either, honestly.
When I thought about when I deal with social interactions, it's like it's like in an RPG, a massively online RPG. Um, I think of them as like quests, right? Like side quests or like daily quests or whatever. I don't play RPGs, but I'm assuming this is what RPGs have is they have these daily quest things where every day you have a like list of things you can do or need to do. And I just go through the list. Or like a weekly, I guess you do things weekly. It's like, oh, on, I don't know, Wednesday I go out and go out to lunch with someone. That's my quest for Wednesday, my weekly quest that on Wednesday I go out to lunch and fill up my daily social interaction quota or my weekly social interaction quota. And I've been called strange for thinking this way, but that's what it feels like to me. Is that it's like I go out to hang with people so I can meet my quota and feel a little bit better over time, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. 'Cause, I feel like I do that too. I'm actually doing that as, like, part of my MD recovery. Like,
Hmm.
I've identified, like, you know, friendships as a goal that I want for my life, a social network. So
Hmm.
I'm putting a lot more effort into building and maintaining those, and I am seeing results. And, you
Hmm.
know, and I don't think I ever will have a friendship like my daydream characters have with each other because I just don't think that's realistic. Maybe it's the dramatic irony thing, you know, it's just it's, you know, an idolized view of friendship that doesn't exist in the real world. And I can accept that. You know, I've also been working on just accepting reality and appreciating it for what it is. It doesn't have to be an ideal fantasy to be meaningful and fulfilling. Oh, that's actually something me and Halo were chatting a little bit before we turned on the recording about uh what was it, Halo?
Yeah,
You're
so
yeah.
so it's hard to put into words, but the idea was a lot of people the way that they when they interact with their daydream characters, sometimes they perceive how they perceive people would act differently in their daydreams compared to how they would in real life. And sometimes a lot of people don't seem to recognize or realize this. And I couldn't figure out a less wordy way to say it, but for example, a lot of us start daydreaming when we're really young, and sometimes we kind of learn how to socialize when when you're really little, like in first grade, through school, through talking with others and through interacting with others, and that's generally how we learn to socialize and how we learn to be people in different social environments. It seems like a lot of us were either alone, just alone all the time, being loners, or we were kind of hermits in school, or sometimes we were so deep in daydreams that that sometimes it could skew our perception of how actual socialization happens in the real world. For example, a lot of people see themselves as Mary Sues in their in their daydream worlds, or um, see themselves as really powerful, or people that aren't who they are in real life. Or and on the flip side, sometimes a lot of other people would treat them way differently in their daydreams than they would in real life. And sometimes that those kind of mixed perceptions of reality and imaginary fantasy can cause different issues for people.
Hmm.
Yeah, even something just as simple as uh, like people just don't act the way that they do in your daydreams. They just don't. So like um if you're you know don't like this guy at work or something, right? And you're always daydreaming about it, and you come up with a real good insult or something, some comment that's going to shake him to his core, right? And you rehearse that in your mind, and then the day comes where he sets you off, and you say it, but it doesn't land. It just sounds stupid and cringe, and on top of that, he's got a witty comeback. You did not shake him. In fact, you look even worse, you know what I mean? Like, people
Hmm.
just don't react like they do in daydreams. Well, that was a mean example, but it can go for, like, nice things too. But,
Hmm.
you know, it just nothing it doesn't matter how much you rehearse it. I guess sometimes it will play out, but a lot of times it just doesn't play out in any way that you thought of.
I think that a lot of people they practice rehearsing either school projects or talking with others through daydreams, this and that. The thing is, I think that depending on the person, of course, sometimes those rehearsals are sometimes wildly different from how reality would actually go. And so I think that the usefulness kind of really depends on the situation and the person. And for example, you're in your daydream, everybody might immediately just jump up off of their seats and clap and just cry because they were just amazed by whatever you said was so incredibly profound and amazing, and then they just decided to create a statue in your honor. But then in real life, it might not go that well. And
Hmm.
and a lot of people that I talk to, it seems that they're on kind of different scales of how realistic or how accurate their daydreams would be and how other people would actually act. So I feel like certain people might need to lower their expectations sometimes.
Yeah, I feel
Hmm.
okay. Sorry, this reminds me of uh I don't want to name names or anything, but it's come up a few times, especially in creative circles, like people who want to write their daydreams. Um they will have a character, right? Who is um different in some way. Uh they have a disability, or they are a different race, or something than the person who is daydreaming and writing them. And you know, I think a maladaptive daydreamer who spends so much time in their daydream can start to feel like they have an understanding of that disability or that race that other people don't. So like I'm a white woman, right? Let's say my character is a black man and I daydream about him all the time. I think people who do that need to be very, very aware that
Careful.
that is just a daydream. That is just a fantasy, and you don't. I would not have a better understanding of the Black experience just because I daydream as that. You know what I mean? Um, or like somebody with if my character has like chronic pain, I don't understand that experience just because I daydream it all the time. So that's really something that's a mind frame you have to like break out of. Like you're you just have a daydream version of what that is, and it's not actually accurate. But I think our brains can trick us into thinking that it is a little bit accurate and that we do have a little bit of insight into these other lives that we really don't.
There's something connected with that that's kind of sort of connected. I've talked with countless people on voice chats where people would talk about their daydreams, and a lot of people were really interested in creating some kind of fiction based off of their daydream plots and whatnot. And what I'm about to say, if some of the people hear it, is going to be brutal, but it's also, I think, honest for most people. Um, if you've ever met certain, especially like old grandparents that are like in their 80s or 90s, that immediately just out of the blue pull out their purse or wallet and show you pictures of their grandkids who you have no idea who they are and just start rattling off stuff about like he's the fifth best in his grade about spelling, or they really like a certain kind of animal, and you kind of nod nicely and smile and you're thinking, I don't give a shit about this kid. Like, I don't care. That's kind of how a lot of other people feel about your daydream characters for the most part, usually. Like, most people's daydream characters, just because you love them, if you wanted to write about them creatively, there still needs to be plot arcs and character development, and there needs to be hooks for the reader and different ways that people can empathize with them. And I feel like a lot of people in this community perceive others that if I enjoy this character, that means that the character is enjoyable and other people would love them too. When in reality, they're like, this is the most Mary Sue. This is awful, awful writing. Wow. But I can't say that to people because it's like insulting an old person's grandkid. But it's what I feel deep down a lot of the time.
Yeah. No, that's so true because we spend so much time with them and we put so much of our emotion and emotional resources into them, and they are in a sense kind of real. We're reacting in a real emotional way to them. They're real to us, they're important to us, they're significant to us, and literally no one else gives a shit. And it's this it's a weird experience. um yeah, I think, well, because we perceive them as so important and significant to us, I think that changes our perception of the maladaptive daydreaming. I think that makes people scared of it,
Hmm.
or not scared of it, but like scared to do anything about it or with it or change it or do anything that will infringe or affect it because you're afraid of losing something really significant.
Like you treat it like a pantheon, or you treat it like your not like a religion, but you fervently believe in your daydreams, not as like a not like it is reality, but you love it so deeply, so dearly, like a family.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that makes a lot of people, because from the outside, I feel like maladaptive daydreaming must sound so stupid.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure about that, right? Because it's like it's in many cases equivalent to like the fandom. Like fandoms seem to be fairly common these days. Like for any television show or movie or series, there is always their fans that absolutely adore it. Right. Now, in some cases, they go way too far, but a lot of them just love the show very, very deeply because they've been like they connect with these characters on a personal level, what would you like Marvel? Some people like Marvel a lot. Some people really like anime. Some animes they like a lot. Like comics, like Superman, like DC, stuff like that. But they'll get really, really attached to these characters. I don't feel it's as though it's really that different, right? In terms of how well, okay, maybe they perceive it a little differently because because we create them ourselves, right? But I feel like that love is very similar, right? You're like a huge fan of the characters that you create and the world that you've made. So I'm not entirely sure because I feel like it's very similar, right? I'm not so sure what the difference there is. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah, I would like to also kind of expand and also talk more about one of the points that Dimmer brought up because I think it was a really good point about how a lot of people in the community, when they perceive their characters, it's always something that's really close to them. Some people perceive them as either their best friends or their romantic interest or their family, and it's their creation. Some people see it as like their kids that they've created, and all in different ways. People are really connected to their characters, and I think that that perception is sometimes it is one of the biggest roadblocks I think for a lot of people to want to either recover, quote unquote, whatever that means for the person, because they're afraid to daydream less because it's almost like they're not experiencing that person that they feel is that they're really close to. And that perception really holds back a lot of people, I think. And I just wanted to bring that up, and I think that that's an interesting point as well. People need to work on changing their perceptions in life as if sometimes if those are your only friends, sometimes it's healthy in life as if you have like the available resources to meet other people, like if you're older, if you're able to have clubs, this or that, like if you're just sitting at home every single day with your daydream characters, I think for a lot of people it could sometimes help to to kind of change how you perceive your own characters, as if these are my friends, these are my only friends, to experience other people as well, and people that actually exist, and kind of changing that perception of your characters from being these are my friends, these are my family, to these are the things that I daydream about, and kind of lessen that perception of them from kind of up on high like a pantheon, like you said, to what they actually are, just daydreams.
Widen the scope of your worldview. Does that sound about right?
I
Yeah,
don't know.
widen the scope of your world. I think it definitely does um, because I think our the intensity of daydreams is really strong, and we get sucked into that spiral, like Halo was saying, where your characters might become your friends, and then you don't have real world friends. It it makes reality feel artificially worse. It's artificially numb, it's artificially dull, it's artificially mundane. Reality isn't really like that, and it doesn't have to be like that. And MDers get caught in this trap where they're like, "What's the point? What's the point of trying? The real world sucks." Um, because they have that perception that um, daydreams are vivid. They have high highs and low lows, and strong relationships or interesting relationships or whatever, and this reality really just doesn't have much to offer. But I don't think that's true.
hmm Reality has plenty to offer. The problem with daydreams compared to reality is that there is so much more that's possible in daydreams that you can't get in reality that makes it like it's a fallacy, like you had said, like a fallacy of some kind where it's not that there's no point to real life, it's just that daydreams are so much more enticing because you can do anything.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to derail you, but I also wanted to go back to something Halo just said too.
Mhm.
Characters are characters, and you can reframe them as, oh, these real people are my friends, and these are things that I just daydream about. And it made me think of, oh my god, I'm gonna go off on a tangent. Here's my hot take of the day, right? The thing that's gonna get us
Uh-huh.
canceled.
The hottest take.
The hottest take. I hate the word para. And I'm pretty sure, since our audience is all MDers, that most of them will have come across this word before. But for anyone who doesn't, para is a word that was created years ago. Actually, it's been around for a while now on Tumblr. A Tumblr blog coined it to describe characters because a maladaptive daydreamer has a unique relationship to their daydream characters. That's what it means. It's a daydream character. But they didn't feel like character really embodied the experience, so they came up with a new word, and that word was para. And I mean, I won't stop anyone from using it, but I don't like it. And I don't like it because of what Halo touched on just there. I think naming them something extra gives them something extra, and they are already so goddamn extra. Like, they don't need it. I feel like giving them that otherness makes them more powerful. So that's why I don't personally use the word.
Well, you're
Um,
right. Words have power, but like in terms of like real life friendships differing from like your daydreaming friendships, right? Like you feel so much more because you give them the word para, because you're so much closer, and you give them like so much more than your real life relationships or friends. Does that make sense? Right? Like there's so much more because you give them so much more comparatively to real life.
yeah, and I don't need to give them anything extra, you know. I'm
We
trying to
give them
give my
enough
real life
already.
the extra. Yeah, yeah, I give them so much. I can't give them their own word and give them back some of that power that I've taken back for myself, you know?
Hmm. Trying to keep a balance and doing that makes it just a only a little unbalanced. Just a
Yeah, I
teensy.
don't need to unnecessarily tip the scales.
Hmm. Hmm. They're not my paras. My characters aren't as prominent as they used to be when I was younger. But I certainly, back when I was young, really, really wanted friends in the way that I had perceived them through my daydreams. Because people, or well, I guess the other kids in real life, did not exactly act the same way, and that's why I found it so hard to uh, come to terms with like being in a platonic relationship with them. Right? Does that make sense?
Um,
Hello.
no, sorry.
Platonic
Uh,
relationship with your characters. I'm just trying to, with my COVID brain, right? I'm like recovering from COVID right now for listeners.
oh,
Just trying to put that together again. Like split from the platonic relationship with your characters. That's kind of an interesting way to put it.
yeah, because at the time, all I had wished for was like having friends, like back, oh, I don't know, in maybe elementary school or something like that. Like I wanted friends, but the friends I wanted were not the friends I would ever get because the way that I had perceived friends in my daydreams were not what friends actually were in real life. Because, relationships, platonic, romantic, parasocial, I guess, or otherwise. Like relationships are messy, right? And the relationship I wanted was just this ideal utopia relationship that just wasn't quite real. And looking back on it, I wasn't ever going to get it, but at the time, and I never I didn't understand it at the time. But looking back, that was something that I just wasn't going to get, no matter how much I tried, because what I wanted isn't what a relationship is, right?
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
And okay, so I was reading I went to a game shop for maybe cards or board games, and things like that, and there was a book called Flabbergasted, which is like a role playing for 1920s, and it had a line in there that said, um, like well, let me see if I can get it quite right. The chance of failure is what makes I can't remember the exact wording, but the chance of failure is what makes like relationships or real life or the role playing interesting, right? Is the chance of failure. And I hadn't considered that in a while. And it didn't exactly come to mind when I thought of role playing, but like the chance of failure, like most people wouldn't consider failure to be like something interesting or worthwhile, right? You following me so far?
Yeah.
But I think in real life compared to because in daydreams you have like this ideal world in a lot of cases, and even if it isn't ideal, it's like you wish to have your characters be the most ideal that they can be. So you don't have this chance of failure. You don't often have failure. in the like real life failure is a little different from like story failure for your in your what do they call it, a paracosm, your daydream world.
Yeah.
But it's like ultimately it's what makes life interesting is the chance of failure. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I think this has come up yeah, like people want to pursue like
Perfection.
yeah, I mean maybe not perfection, but like a true love. Like
Hmm.
I'm going to go with romantic relationships here. And they want a true love in real life, like a true love can exist
Hmm.
in a fantasy or a movie or something, but or a daydream here. So but there isn't, you're right, like there isn't that chance of failure in your daydreams if two characters are together and they have true love. The chances of failure there are fairly artificial. Like
Hmm.
that they're meant to be together and they're going to no matter what happens. But in real life, like you have to choose love. And not only do you have to choose it, but to make a long-term relationship work, your partner also has to choose to love you like every day. And that's what that's the difference. Like I love my husband and it's not a you know
Ooey
fairy
gooey,
tale.
lovey dovey.
Yeah, it's not a fairy tale romance where we're truly in love, but we are truly in love through choosing to be with each other and work through our problems every day of our marriage.
Hmm.
It's real.
I think that kind of realistic expectation of relationships compared to a lot of people's very unrealistic expectations of IRO relationships based off of imaginary ones that they have is something that plagues a lot of people. I know a lot of people, they say that they're trying to date or they're trying to talk to other people, but other people just don't understand them like their daydream characters do. Their daydream characters and their daydreams, there's never a misunderstanding. They just get them. They just understand. They're always on the same page. But then the people in real life, it's like they, there's not that same, like there needs to be like communication that you normally don't have to have inside the daydreams, and there has to be other normal things for a relationship that a lot of people in our community that seem to either take for granted or don't understand sometimes. And they kind of have these false expectations on people sometimes because that's how their daydream characters work and that's how they interact with their daydream characters. And then the people in just real life, they just don't either measure up or it's just awful in comparison. And sometimes I think that needs either reevaluating or reperceiving certain relationships with real life and in their daydream world. And I think that can sometimes take more work than what a lot of people realize.
Communication is key, but communication is hard. It is by far the hardest part of any relationship. And as it turns out, in in most cases, in the majority of cases, people are not very good at it, no matter who you are. Most people are just kind of bumbling around trying to figure things out as they go. And it's not easy for anyone. It's not easier for the old. It doesn't get any easier the older you get. You just got to kind of go through, fumble, fail, and learn. So that's what I think is like. Well, you just mentioned it in like a pretty big capacity, but that's why like going through relationships in real life doesn't, like, even when I fail, it doesn't bother me too much because I know other people are having just as hard of a time. But failure isn't fun, and nobody likes it. Nobody wants to fail. Nobody actively roots for. Well, some people root for failure, but not on themselves, right? We can cut
Let's
it out.
yeah, let's kind of skip down to, we got to wrap it up maybe. Let's
Mhm.
skip down to our last question here from the community.
Mhm. It was the following. Do you have expectations for your future? And do you have expectations for the future of your daydreams? And I know someone out there just said, no, I don't have any expectations for my future because that's what I told myself ages ago. But that has since changed. Time has gone by, and I do have expectations for myself in the future. And it depends on the day. Some days I have, sometimes I have a bad day, and I don't. I'm like, my expectation is I'm going to get up, I'm going to have a sandwich, and then I'm going to try to have a nice day. I'm going to try to relax. And then there's days where I have work, so I try to hope that work's good and not too awful for me. And some days are a little bit better. I expect myself to be productive today, or I expect to maybe work out today. Stuff like that. It depends on the day. It doesn't have to be big. At least it's not big for me. Sometimes I just want to get up, have a sandwich, and chill out. Not go too far and go too deep into it. But expectations for the future of my daydreams, that's a little bit tougher. That's a little bit harder.
Yeah, that one is a little bit harder. Same though. I don't have big expectations for my future. I have expectations for like next week and next month, maybe.
Mhm.
I'm content. I'm content to coast. I do not have lofty ambitions. I just want a simple, normal life, and
I want
I'm
to get a
fine with that.
swimsuit, and I want to tan out like on my balcony of my apartment, or like in the middle of the road somewhere. I just want to walk around. I want to be
Yeah.
that. I want to be that. Oh my god, the Sims. I want to be a Sim that just walks around, and people are like, "What is that Sim doing over there?" I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just hanging around.
Oh, I do want another baby. I guess that's a pretty big long-term expectation that I have. Like, I'm still trying to get pregnant, so like,
Congratulations in advance.
thank you, thank you. But expectations for the future of my day, like, I've never really had expectations for my daydreams. I don't even, I don't plot them out. I'm not writing them down, so I don't have any creative expectations from them. I just sort of assume they'll be there forever, and eventually I'll achieve balance with them.
Oh, here we go. Here's something for the future of my daydreams. Um,
I
And he
don't think that was
left.
intentional.
He just left the chat.
Wow.
Ah, he
I
must have
guess
hit a button.
I guess so. I guess I will just mention, unlike these two slackers, I have very, very ambitious goals in life. Now that I kind of have my daydreaming more in check, I hope to succeed more in my career in the next few years or other projects I'm working on. I want to be rich enough to buy a giant yacht that has its own pool at the top of it that has a smaller yacht on the top. That's and I've been helping with like politics in the past, and I've been helping with like different grant things. Like I'm trying to learn how to do more like certain grant things. Like I want to become like mindlessly wealthy. I don't care about oh it's not normal or real. No, like I'm gonna try to make this a reality. And it says, do you have expectations for the future of your daydreams? I think I am working towards trying to write some of my daydream plots as like novels or other kind of things. And to be completely honest, my goals are completely unrealistic. Like I want them to become giant, overwhelming, like smash box office hits if they become movies, or huge bestsellers if they become if like in novel form. And honestly, this isn't healthy, but I'm not saying it's healthy. But if there were anything less, I would be disappointed.
Yeah, I accidentally got kicked out of Discord because it crashed. But by the way, congratulations in advance. Good luck to you, Dimmer. I'm hoping the best for you. I want you to succeed.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Yeah, I hope
but
Dimmer has like 10 kids at once. It becomes like the Octomom. Just to
no, I figured out. I think I have an answer for the future of my daydreams. So I was watching a um I was watching a what's it called? I was watching a documentary on a gentleman by the name of Henry Darger, who in I think the 1920s or 30s, around that time, he spent his whole life doing nothing but writing. And he wrote and he drew, and nobody knew about it until he was on his deathbed, and his landlords went through his apartment cleaning it out, and they found just books and like massive amounts of like drawings, and he had a huge story and a huge world that he wrote, and nobody knew about it till it was on his deathbed. And everyone said, wow, this would have been interesting to read. I would have loved to see you publish it. And the only thing he said was, too late now. But I think what they call it is the heroic artist, or an outsider artist is what they call it. But it is an artist who does art for the sake of art itself, right? Not for money, not for power or influence or anything like that. They do art just to do art, right? All I can ever hope for is, life might be, little peaks and valleys, nothing too fancy, but I hope to, at the very least, get to the point where I have put a fair bit, because I don't feel like I'll ever run out of daydreams. I don't think I'll ever run out of anything, really. Um, when it comes to like this sort of creative sort of MD that I got flowing around in my brain. But I hope to one day get my like a body of work put down, so that one day somebody like my family or someone goes out and, well, maybe they want to sell it or maybe they want to give it away. I don't know. But I want to write and do this art, like whatever art for my desire, just to do it, to like put it down, put it in writing, just to show that I had it, rather than let it sort of float away. Because I've let a lot of daydreams and storylines and everything float away, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with things coming and going. I don't need to keep it all. I don't need it all to sort of, become I want the stories to be the best they can be, but they don't need to stay, right? Everything is transient. But that's what I have for the future of my daydreams. Are they expectations? No, I think they're more like hopes, and that's all I can really do, is hope for the best. You know what I mean? Do my best, hope for the best. You know,
Oh,
I
I'm
think
the
that
opposite. Like my husband is under strict orders to burn everything I've written upon my death.
yeah. Yeah, maybe it's because I'll like in like an ideal time and place I would have been a writer or an artist of some kind, but I'm forced to make money. So I've gone into a profession that makes money rather than makes me happy. So I'll use this as a means of making myself happy in the meantime.
Oh, sorry. I just had a dark thought. I don't know if we'll cut this out.
We might.
um, expectations for the future of your daydreams and all that stuff that you were just saying just made me think of people. Um, not me, but from time to time you'll come across somebody who just muses, and I don't know how deeply they believe it, but just sort of muses on the afterlife, that maybe after death their daydreams is where they will go to.
I'm gonna be completely honest. I'd be totally down, honestly, to be honest, because I have many of them.
In a similar but different kind of way to look at it, if you look at your daydream characters as if they're living in their own lives inside of your world, for a lot of people, if they don't create them or publish them, this or that, a lot of times their entire world will one day hit an Armageddon where they're going to cease to exist once their creator dies or ignores them in the future. So that's
Hmm.
like their apocalyptic scenario when like little Timmy dies.
Oh my
Hmm.
god, yeah. I think they're all gonna die with me. Oh man,
Hmm.
we are leaving this so depressing.
I don't
But
think it's that depressing, personally, right? Because it's
yeah.
just another one of those versions of the multiverse. Because people have written stories where this, like our world, is the world where other worlds spawn, right? Like we are what is it, Yggdrasil, right? Like we are the genesis. Like this universe is the genesis for other universes going forward, and that's why none of them can touch us, and that's why we're always so like it's just us, is because we are the creators, and everything else spawns from us, which is not exactly as depressing, right? It's the flip side, right? Where it's like we don't go there; they come from us. We are like the creators, which I like. I like a little bit more. I like that the idea of I am making universes that are then placed out into the multiverse every single time I decide to make a new story or a new world. Right. I like that a bit more. Does that help a little bit? Does that sound good? Because I like that idea a lot.
I mean, I like that idea. I think it's fun. I don't believe
Mhm.
in any of it though. Like I have a much more I've some people call it depressing, but I think it's just realistic and grounded. Like I'm not
Mhm.
leaving anything behind. Even what I do leave behind, will be lost within a few years. Like what
Mhm.
I want to leave behind, and it's not my main motivator for having children. It's a hope that I have for my children because I don't believe in an afterlife. I I want more kids and I want them to have kids. That's why I'm having more than one, hedge my bets in case one of them doesn't want children.
Mhm.
I want my genetic lineage to be there standing on the earth when the sun explodes. Like that's it. That's it. I just want me to be there. in that
Mhm.
line at the end of everything, and that's
You should
success.
write that line into your will and like put it on your tombstone.
Right. Right. It's so out of my hands, though. Because you can't.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what I want, but I would never like hound my son. Like, you need to give me grandbabies. If he doesn't
You need
want
to put in
kids, he
your
doesn't
will
want
where they
kids.
can only inherit if they have kids. That's what you need
It's
to put
out
in
of
your
my
will.
hands. Like, I just hope it happens.
I guess if I had to like have a legacy of some kind, I would like a lot of people wish to have are some people are scared of their maladaptive daydreaming, feeling like it robs them of something. I feel slightly different, right? I feel like maladaptive daydreaming is, they say a curse is just an unwanted blessing. And I feel like maladaptive daydreaming is the equivalent of of mad inspiration. Do you know what mad inspiration is? They've called it something different over the ages. Um, but mad inspiration is the equivalent of having so many ideas you drive yourself insane. So I'd like to put some of it down on paper in the hopes that some of them survive, right? And that would be my legacy. I like that a lot because I like the genetic one. I like that too, but I like the maladaptive daydreaming legacy a little bit more because I feel like it's a little bit more personal to me, and that's why I guess that's the future I have for my daydreams. I hope this mad inspiration that follows me, like either a guardian angel or a demon, depending on your perspective. I hope that this mad inspiration that follows me wherever I go allows me to live a bit longer. People have said that there's two deaths, and I would like to live just a bit longer after my first death comes, if you know what I mean.
No, what's the
No,
first death?
oh, the first death is when you die, and the second death is when the last person forgets your name, right? No one remembers
Oh.
you anymore. So I'd like to be, I'd like, if I had a legacy, I'd like it to be remembered through my works. If and when I do put them down, because I do fully intend to work at putting them down as I go forward throughout my life. Is that depressing? I don't know. But I like the idea of mad inspiration. I feel like it's perfect. It's the perfect either an antagonist or an ambivalent force for whatever story I decide to write or whatever daydream I decide to go about with. I like that idea quite a bit. Right? It's like a chaotic neutral god of some kind. Does that make sense? And I'm always a fan of the chaotic and the neutral.
Yeah. No, I think that's nice, and I think, I don't know, I feel like that would be comforting to a lot of maladaptive daydreamers to feel like they've left something creative behind. So,
Mhm.
this wasn't planned, but I'll just plug, like, there's a maladaptive daydreaming writing server. If people are interested in writing down their maladaptive daydreams, seek it out, join it. Um, if you suck at writing, that's okay. Like, what do we say? Sucking
Mhm.
at something is just the first step to being kinda good at something?
Mhm.
Like, try it
I
out.
think to also mention sometimes, because I'm also pretty active in that server, and I've been writing one of some of my daydream stories as novels since I've joined that server. I've been more consistent at it, and a lot of people I've talked to, a lot of maladaptive daydreamers are afraid to daydream less because they feel like that they're losing part of themselves or they're losing the relationships with their characters, this or that. And because I think that that's not necessarily true, and sometimes that there are healthier ways that you could still experience your daydream world without immersively or maladaptively daydreaming. And like you could still be experiencing it by doing art or writing down stories that you have, and you're not only just writing it down, but you're also practicing this new craft that you're having. You're improving your writing skills, and you're plotting this and that. So I think that I think that doing it is great for, skill building, to have something tangible that's not just in your mind, but also to let go of and kind of reperceive how you see the daydream characters and how you reperceive your imaginary world from just being imaginary to being a book or a novel or some kind of animation or something actually tangible.
Mhm. All right. I think that's it for tonight. I think that's
Yeah,
about
I
the best
think
that we got.
I think that's a good beat to end on.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you soon. You can catch us on Spotify. Which ones are they? Spotify, YouTube, is YouTube,
Yeah.
Spotify?
YouTube, Spotify, we're on Anchor. Anchor puts it out on a bunch of stuff.
Okay, Anchor
Pocket
does it
Cast.
now. Okay,
Yeah,
Pocket
Google,
Cast.
Apple, everything.
For those of you on YouTube, we'll have links to what we've talked about if we talk about more than one thing in the description below. We'll have links to the Maladaptive Writing Discord that Dimmer plugged. Also, the Maladaptive Daydreaming Discord. We'll also have a link to that there. Is there anything else in particular you'd like to plug, Dimmer, in the meantime?
Oh, actually there is. I wasn't planning on doing this either, but speaking of writing, the newsletter is looking for new submissions for their February March edition. They're always accepting submissions. So like a one-off is fine, or or actually also looking for people who just like want to come on board and write articles all the time. So like yeah, anything. If you have thoughts, opinions, experiences that you would just like to get down, it's a really good little outlet. I'll put a link to the contact page for the newsletter down below as well.
And one last person, or just about everybody else I'd like to thank would be you, dear viewer. This will be a new season for Parallel Lives, and we'd like to thank you for hopping up on board.
Yeah, our first episode back. We probably should have done like the welcome back in the beginning, but oh well.
Well, we could do a welcome back here. But
Welcome
it
back,
seems a little late. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you all soon.